Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elisa Joseph, and I am the Director of Programs at the U.S. Black Chambers. And we're really excited to have all of you join us today for what I know is going to be a very exciting conversation. We're going to be talking about the Paycheck Protection Program today and the new rule requirement. We know that there have been so many changes to the program. And in order for you to best be able, what we would say, put your best foot forward in terms of applying for funds under this program, which you have until March 31st to do that, we want to make sure that you get all the information that you need and can ask, questions that may have been finding a way so that we can take a lot of the mystery out of this for you. And so with that, I am going to just introduce our three speakers for today. This conversation is going to be led by Jamon Phoenix with the Prism Group. The Prism Group is headquartered in DC, and they really work with organizations like ours to provide strategic communications and public affairs, governmental affairs information on a bipartisan basis. And so they really help us be able to sift through the legislation that's out there in order to be able to present what's important to Black businesses, what's important to small businesses, and how we can advocate on your behalf. And as you know, one of our pillars is advocacy. And so the Prism Group is a group that allows us to be able to do that effectively. Secondly, we have Pamela Pugh from Regeneration LLC. And I'd like to call Pamela's group really a catalyst for being able to pull community partners, lending partners, capital financiers, all of the things that make the information, your access, your ability to navigate the local environment, to make that all possible. And so we're excited to have Pamela here today to give her perspective on how we really coordinate resources in a way that helps small businesses. And then finally, we have Shea Jackson. Shea is with, with JP Morgan Chase. He works with us on the Advancing Black Entrepreneurs Program. So if any of you have been here and have been able to hear Shea on our calls when we're talking about how best to get you capital, our series called The Power of Capital, he is really a great expert on how to really assist small businesses and Black-owned businesses in particular in understanding how to navigate lending and all of the parameters that come along with that. And so with that, I want to thank everyone for being here. Thank you all for joining us today. And Jamon, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Elisa, for those opening remarks. And it has been a great deal I have a great deal of honor and respect working with U.S. Black Chambers and you, Elisa. Good afternoon, everyone. It's certainly great sharing a great wealth of knowledge with me and my colleagues and fellow panelists today about a very critical program that was created last year. And it really rolled out in April. It's nearly $1 trillion program imposed by Congress and in the SBA to provide COVID-19 relief to small businesses and American workers. And so we are here specifically today to talk about the second round of the Paycheck Protection Program. And the second round of the Paycheck Protection Program was actually included into the Economic Aid to Hard-Hit Small Businesses and Nonprofits Venue Act. That's a long title. In short, we can just say the latest coronavirus relief bill. And you can go on to the next one, the next slide. And so this big package really includes much language, right? Much language for small business owners to kind of intake. And we want to make sure that you all Black business owners have the technical know-how to really access these Paycheck Protection Program loans and even economic injury disasters loans. And so one of the things that are here are a handful of things that you need to know from the latest package is that the Paycheck Protection Program has been reopened, and it was previously closed in August. And it also includes eligibility for a second Paycheck Protection Program loan. Another thing is that the EIDL loan program has been overhauled. And this also includes the the EIDL Advanced Grant Program as well. And the third thing, of course, is that SBA will continue the program continue the program through March, and not only the program, but also making payments on pre-existing SBA loans through March of this year. And there have been a lot of tax changes to the Paycheck Protection Program and also to the small business ecosystem at the federal level in the past year. So you definitely need to make sure that your small business is in compliance with IRS guidelines in seeking small business support from the federal government. You can go on to the next one. So those are the top things that you need to know really about the Paycheck Protection Program. I definitely want to spend some time here so that you all know the ebb and flows of this program, the complexities of it, and we want to make sure that you all have the long and short information that you need to go apply for a Paycheck Protection Program loan either today or this week if you have not already done so. And even if you haven't even already gotten a second loan. And so, as I've mentioned before, the Paycheck Protection Program is a small business relief program that started April of last year. They've doled out about $1 trillion. Well, they have in authority about $1 trillion of relief from federal government that small businesses are able to take advantage of. You can go on to the next one. And so with this large amount of liquidity that's available, there are specific majority of people who are small business owners who are able to take advantage of this. Chief among them, if you have not applied for a paycheck protection program, then of course you are able to apply now. But if you've applied, you've received a paycheck protection program in the past, so last year before the program opened back up, then you can also apply for a PPP loan. And so some of the requirements that you need to meet is that your small business would need to be fewer than 300 employees. It would have needed to sustain a 25% drop in gross revenue in any quarter of last year, not just the first and second quarter, when the pandemic really first started in this country. And one of the last measures for requirements is that your small business needed to have been in place as of February 15th. So a little bit over a year ago before the pandemic started, you needed to make sure that your business was in operation. And so it's pretty self-explanatory for first-time borrowers. You need less than 500 employees. And also, it's also very critical to understand that while 501c6 and 501c3 organizations and other nonprofits are able to take advantage of these loans, non-lobbying organizations with fewer than 150 employees, such as local chambers of commerce, many memberships, many Black Chamber of Commerces that make up the membership of USBC, they can also take advantage of it. And so you can go on to the next one. And here's a good snapshot of, you asked, I wasn't eligible the last time. What changed? I just mentioned these. And so we know that newspaper organizations, a lot of Black broadcasters and radio stations around the country, especially in majority Black cities or majority minority cities like Atlanta, DC, where I currently am, and even in New York City, these are all organizations and businesses who are able to take advantage of the loan. And so we also know that publicly traded companies like McDonald's and other big companies. I think at the advent of the coronavirus and when the PPP loan first opened, there was a big debacle on big and large businesses such as Sweet Green and others. I believe Five Guys was in them. They took advantage of these loans. And so Congress has provided a provision to ensure that publicly traded companies aren't inside. And so you can go on to the next one as well. So we're going to pick up the pace a little bit. We don't want to get too into the details as most of this information can be found in a comprehensive manner on SBA.gov and Department of Treasury as well. There is a cap to the PPP loan, and this $2 million is really the cap, and that's 2.5 times the multiple average monthly payroll cost. And also, there is an amended cap, a greater cap for businesses in the accommodation and food services industries. And so here I want to tag team with my colleague Pamela, who's also on. We understand our Congress has understood and USBC understands, and we've frankly been really out on the forefront of this argument that the latest round of Paycheck Protection Program has overlooked Black business owners. It overlooked brown business owners. And one of the things that we've been advocating for in the past several months before the finalization of this package, the one that we are mentioning today, is that it needs to be more targeted measures. And so I wanted to make sure that you all understood, in addition to what Pamela is going to provide us, is that there is ability for small business owners with 10 or less employees. So now we're getting into that sole proprietor space, and also CDFI lenders, so mission-based lenders to take advantage of the Paycheck Protection Program. And a couple of weeks ago, the SBA opened the Paycheck Protection Program. When they reopened it, they opened it to very small businesses and mission-based lenders to ensure that they got first round of the new funds. And so they're continue to be set aside today. But we do want to underscore that Black business owners, brown business owners, really historically disadvantaged business owners are able to take advantage of small tranches of money that has been set aside for the sole purpose of ensuring that there are targeted approaches. And so, Pamela, I want to make sure that you have time to add to this. And
yes, Jamon, and I thank you and U.S. Black Chambers for your voice of advocacy around these issues. We don't need to go over the statistics, but we don't want to continue to be here when we talk about the statistics, the dire statistics, when we look at Black businesses, businesses of color. But really, some of the additional things that we're doing is working with those folks who are charged to support our businesses, our Black businesses, brown businesses, businesses in general, and making sure that those business owners, those small business owners, feel the need and also feel the worth of working with these entities. And having the opportunity to be here in Michigan and working with our Small Business Development Corporation and really bringing U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce in to help us to do this work, but really making sure that our businesses have equitable access to capital, making sure that they have equitable access to services, and supporting them in doing that. And so some of the things that we're doing, how we're doing that, is having professional development with these organizations so that they recognize the data that you all put forward to us, and making sure that they not only recognize that data, but they're utilizing that data to drive services to the places at greatest need. So it's not at the end of the when all the money is gone, that we recognize that the funding has not gone to the right places, and then that we're putting in measures that where accountability can be set for these organizations, and thankful that these organizations are stepping up and doing these type of activities to do this. And so for our small businesses, we really want our small businesses to feel comfortable with saying when these organizations are not meeting their needs, so that those issues can be addressed. And again, we're thankful for the partnerships that we have with Regeneration LLC, U.S. Black Chambers of Commerce, as well as Prism and others, and so we want to continue this so that we don't have to be here talking about the inequitable access to services, to capital. And again, thank you all for putting these measures in place, so that we can move forward with these big steps, making sure that these communities have access. And with the measures, we hope to be able to correct some long and unjust wrongs.
Thank you for that. That's exactly where we see the new administration and the Congress moving to now with the negotiations around another stimulus package. But we'll get to that a little bit later. We want to move on to if you received a Paycheck Protection Program in the past and you want to apply for a new Paycheck Protection Program loan. Here's what you need to know about forgiveness is that there has been some changes made in the very last stimulus package. And really, in short, it was changes carried over from the very first Paycheck Protection Program when it was modified in the early part of the summer. And what you need to know is that in order to be eligible for loan forgiveness, you would need to be up to the full originated amount if you spend over 60% of the PPP loan. And so there is a rule, a 60-40 rule. 60% will be spent on payroll and all other eligible costs, and then 40% will be spent on the eligibilities as listed. And so eligibilities include personal protective equipment, also investment and improvements in the facility and modifications. We know that many businesses, especially restaurants, are actually going out and investing in plexiglass or investing in outdoor restaurants. They did it in the fall to make sure that they can really remain open. There has been provisions in place to ensure that small business owners are recompensated for those efforts. So you can move on to the next one. And so if you ask yourself, if you've already taken out a PPP loan, will this new law impact forgiveness for your initial loan? And the long and short of that is the new provisions around PPP aims to make applying for a loan much easier. There has been modifications to what we will call a simplified forgiveness form. And when Shea jumps in as well, he'll be able to tell you, since he's on the institutional banking side, when your lender, if you go through a traditional bank or even a mission-based lender, when you go to apply for forgiveness, you'll be going through the lender of whom you took your PPP loan from, and this is to make it more easier. Now, there is provisions in place to ensure that there is no fraud in the program, as we've seen before, and there are also provisions in place to make sure that small business owners are as accurate as possible in what their funds went to and when they received the loan. So you can go to the next slide. And so if you ask yourself, how long will you have to apply for a PPP loan? As mentioned before, the second round opened in late January and slash early February, earlier this month for everyone. And it'll go through for right now, March 31st of this year. So you still have a couple of more weeks to take advantage of the Paycheck Protection Program. And from the last update at SBA.gov, there is still hundreds of billions of dollars left to take advantage of if you're a small business owner, especially if you're a part of that underserved and minority community group, because there are specific set asides for you to be able to take advantage of either at a traditional lender or a mission-based lender. Yep.
It's Elisa. Quick question. We have a question from Gwen George, but it basically is also my question as well. And I know that between you and Shea will be able to answer this. One of the things that I've been seeing, because I'm experiencing this myself with people coming to ask for technical assistance, is whether or not people can apply through multiple financial institutions. And so part of it is that they may not receive an affirmative answer from one, and then may, it's not that they still don't need the funding, may apply to a few. So, what I've been recommending is leveraging some of our African-American CDFIs, which we have a list on our website. But what are you all advising relative to this? And if they don't receive an affirmative answer, what should be their next step?
Yeah, I can take that. So the thing about PPP, that's a big misconception, is that the average business owner thinks that the bank or the banker is directly helping with the application. The nasty truth is, as was mentioned earlier, your bigger companies that have like an assigned banker, so we're talking maybe 20 million or up, that's what they're referring to as in a banker in the traditional bank world. And I'm gonna say for Chase, I'm gonna say I've seen this at other big banks, but I'm not gonna speak for them. But we've seen this as Chase and what we're addressing. The biggest gap point you're gonna see from owners needing help, black, white, another, and we'll drill down to our Black business owners, are going to be between that revenue size of probably about 10,000 to 90,000 or 900,000 in revenue. So basically anything less than $1 million, that particular owner is not sanctioned, but they're going to operate with the retail banker who is agnostic around their specialties. They do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Mm-hmm. So with your smaller banks, you may have more hand-to-hand holding on the application part. But at the end of the day, what I'm telling my business owners is that this is nothing but a big administrative task. And it's important to check the boxes. And so let's put out there. What I have seen, to answer your question directly, is we cannot tell an owner what to and what not to do. But what I will say is this: when you get your PPP loan, and I have seen this happen, I've seen an owner apply 2 different places, get their PPP loan. It is going to be incumbent on that owner to go through an application withdrawal process with any other lender that they have put one in if they received their. So let's say you received your PPP loan through a Black CDFI or through Chase. If you have 3 other applications out there, I highly recommend you go through that process and also keep your paperwork. Dealing with institutions, they lose stuff. It's not going to, the tracking number is not going to be there when you particularly want it in your email. The email is not going to be available. So we must act with an abundance of caution and make sure, if we're going to be assertive with our applications, which I wouldn't sway for it or against it. I definitely see benefits of doing so. There is nothing that says you cannot have multiple applications. It's something that says you can't have multiple PPP loans. So we're in some type of gray area. So if I was an owner, I would, and knowing what I know and what I advise my owners is, if you do have multiples in and you're successful with one, please be very, very, very cognizant and do your due diligence when withdrawing an application, and make sure you keep your paperwork, because there's only one SBA ID that when it comes with these PPP loans.
That's great advice. I'm going to hold the other question that Gwen has, but I think even for the work that we're doing, I think that's great advice to just make sure, we've said this before, even when we talk about forgiveness, is really keeping that paper trail. This is one of those things where the paper trail is really everything. So thank you for that advice.
Yeah, that's and just to tag along with that, and this is why this is why Congress has imposed new regulations and new provisions inside of the latest coronavirus relief plan is because we understood that while there may seem to be an abundance of fraud per se, right? If JK Phoenix Enterprises applies for a PPP loan through Chase, and then I go to Elisa, whom is a banker at a Black CDFI, that if I get both, then it's not necessarily a fraud thing because I did it mistakenly. But this is why it's very imperative that we follow after what Shea mentioned of moving forward to remove our application from other financial institutions. And again, Congress has imposed new laws to ensure that our new regulations so that the SBA will take a longer time in approving your PPP loan, but because they are doing a check, a run through, a quick proof on whether many of these provisions apply to your business. And if that is the case, then you'll get a kickback from the agency via your lender, and they'll be able to discuss ways in which you can move forward.
And if I could peel in just one thing and you're absolutely right. I think one thing that mitigates the continued mitigation of that is understanding this is PPP 3. So PPP 1 and 2 was equivalent to the Hunger Games for administrative work and getting stuff in, right? People were stressing every day. You could feel the tension. I think everybody could. But PPP 3 is a lot different, where this matters the severity and the hunger for it. And so one thing you want to do before you put in, so do I see multiple applications around this time? I'm seeing less and less of them. But what I am seeing is when I'm talking to owners, and I've had owners reach out to the bank. You all know I was a former banker, so I have hundreds of clients that still reach out to me, and they'll say, "Well, Chase is taking long with this, they're taking long with that." Once we've kind of put our head under the hood, it's something that the owner missed, and it's been reclaimed, and it's sitting in the queue ready to get kicked back to get additional information. So it's imperative that before we even submit, don't go to your banker. Again, if you're in my opinion, I think you start with your payroll company, you start with the CPA, you start with resources like this. And if you're talking to a banker, from what I know how Chase has everything set up, that means something was wrong with the application, and we now are trying to reclaim it and fix it. But we're just not uniquely positioned. We can tell you where to put things, but as far as advising, we don't have that. So I'll be quiet there about that. Just wanted to get the update of the environment. We're not really seeing as many holdings and stress like we were the first time.
And that's a very critical point. And before we move on, we don't want to belabor this topic, but this is why Pamela and her colleagues are very important. Even in Michigan, you mentioned the point of resource partners, right? Connecting with people who understand the technical assistance of applying for these loans. We at the policy level, and especially in Washington, D.C., we see the impact that is present for small businesses, at the local level, and we want to make sure that small business owners understand that there are resource partners in communities, particularly underserved communities or majority minority communities, to actually assist. And a good way of understanding that is by connecting with your local Black CDFI or your other mission-based lenders. That's critically important, even connecting with your SBICs in your state. And so we can briefly hit on the economic injury disaster loans really quickly. Elisa, you can move to the next slide. And this is important because we've all heard this ubiquitous statement last year. I've even heard it in Washington, D.C. Small business owners call me up saying, "Hey, can I get a $10,000 grant from the federal government?" And while it was partly true, there is new grants that the federal government has put in place for small business owners to receive. It wasn't fully $10,000. It was in fact about $1,000 per employee. And with Black business owners, the importance and the nuance for that was 95% of Black businesses or so, they are sole proprietorship. So they didn't have any employees. So if you applied for an EIDL loan, if you were fortunate to get one, you got about $1,000. The new changes to these programs basically underscores the point about underserved communities and serving, such populations. And it also reopens the advanced grant in addition to reopening the entire EIDL program. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, there has been some success in this in the past 2 or 3 weeks or so, and the SBA being able to efficiently move through EIDL applications and EIDL advanced grant applications. And so the SBA must approve. The reason why this is true, because the SBA was mandated to approve and disperse advances within 3 to 21 days of an application period. So, there are many sectors to understanding what relief works best for your small business. And, here is a great example of if you are applying for a PPP loan and you also are looking forward to getting an EIDL advanced grant, you can do both. While borrowers aren't authorized to receive an EIDL and PPP loan together, they can take advantage of the EIDL advanced grant. So if I apply for an EIDL advance and I'm awarded $5,000 for my small business, and I also apply for a PPP program, I may be denied for an EIDL loan, but I can take advantage of that EIDL advance grant of $5,000 and also take advantage of my Paycheck Protection Program. And with that may be advantageous for some small business owners because the EIDL advance, you have to go through the Small Business Administration and you will have to pay it back. With the Paycheck Protection Program, the reason why it has been a cornerstone popular program nationwide is because it is 100% forgivable if you abide by the measures put in place.
So Jamon, this is Elisa again. I've got a couple of questions. This is really all great information because a lot has really changed. It feels, I can tell you even from the EIDL loan program perspective last year, clients were waiting and waiting and waiting, and it took forever for them to provide decisions. So my hope is that this is moving a lot more quickly and manageable in the process. And so with that, a couple of questions. Again, from Gwen George, she's a solopreneur. She wants to request funding for health and business insurance as well as business operations costs. I know that there is a breakdown in terms of what's considered to be operating expenses. Can you all address that? And then I'll ask the other two questions.
Yeah, that's a great question, Gwen, and I love the solopreneur nomenclature that you've mentioned. There is a breakdown. And a great way of thinking about this is that paychecks, right? What you pay yourself, if you can verify it, that needs to be 60% of your PPP loan, or 60% of your PPP loan needs to go to paychecks, and 40% of it needs to go. Can be used to buy, again, as I've mentioned before, protective equipment. It can be used for paying rent for if you own a brick and mortar store. And it also, if I'm not mistaken, the health provisions can be used inside of that 60% piece, because it is included in payroll. And you would want to go to the Department of Treasury website. They have a very comprehensive guideline and Q&A section that you can take advantage of. But however, it's up to $100,000 per employee that you can use it on. And I'm talking about that 60% threshold of a Paycheck Protection Program loan. You need to pay yourself up to $100,000. And I believe the health provision is included into that threshold. And so just make sure that you go to the Department of Treasury, you carefully read through the Q&A guidance. I believe it's about 40 Q&A questions about what your PPP loan can be used for. But again, 40% of it could be used for if your small business incurs any other expense outside of payroll.
Next question is from Dawn Tucker. She has received the first round PPP. Doesn't necessarily have that 25% decline that you've talked about for the second round, but she still could use funding. And I think that's why talking about PPP and EIDL are really important, because EIDL extends beyond the PPP period. So can you talk a little bit about, she wants to sustain her business, and I know for EIDL in particular, I think it's at least 2 or 3 years that you can take the loan out for. If there are still funds available, what is her best option? We don't know what's going to happen after March 31st for PPP. What is the best option in terms of looking for financing?
That's a great question. And, you aren't the only small business owner who is currently grappling with that. Is that, I'm kind of in this hard place. But however, I'm not in such a hard place where I need a loan that will last 2 or 3 years, or that I want to be paying on 2 or 3 years. And this is where you get into what we will call in the small business network, micro loans, or, just smaller loans to sustain you and to help you pass a, let's say, 3 to 4 month period. And with that, it's important to first look to, I know we mentioned it much before. Pamela may understand this too, as well, but look to your local entities to support you. Many of them have provided grant programs for small businesses. There's a really exceptional one in Detroit, Michigan. Not sure if you're there, but there's a really good one in how the Detroit city government has supported their small businesses by putting together a grant program. And in addition to that, the EIDL program is able to help by the way of EIDL advanced grants. And again, we're not, Prism Group takes no liberty in being your financial advisor. So this is something to definitely do research and speak with your financial advisor when applying to loans. So prefacing that, but however, you could take advantage of an EIDL advanced grant, an EIDL loan at a very smaller threshold once you speak to your local small business administration advocate. And you can then, of course, overlook the PPP program. But again, if you apply for forgiveness for your first PPP loan, and you still haven't shown that you need or that you've sustained 25% of your second PPP, of 25% of damage, I'm sorry, to get a second PPP loan, I think that that's a great catch. And there is still resources out there to help you because you aren't in that boat alone.
I'd love to have Pamela jump in. I will say, in terms of just even your local, whether they be city or county grants, there have been some corporate grants as well. I know if you subscribe to our newsletter, we are definitely showcasing the ones that are coming through as we're seeing them. Pamela, in your market, what are you seeing? I know that some cities and counties right now aren't getting as much funding from the federal government to do this stuff, but they've been really relying on their local philanthropic community to make some things happen. So what's happening in your neck of the woods?
So I would agree. I think that there is a mixture of both, but I think that, one of the statistics that we know is that we have to be comfortable to reach out and to work with those supports and those groups who are supposed to help us to get that capital formation. I'm obviously a small business owner myself, and it's an area that I struggled in. And one of the things that I was able to do was to get a peer mentor, and it's a model that we're also looking to implement at our regional SBDC here in Michigan, but really trying to feel more comfortable about asking these questions, going after these funding opportunities. But as you said, first of all, just asking and looking around and feeling that you are worthy, feeling that we deserve the assistance, the funding, just like anyone else, and maybe even more. And so those are the first barriers that I believe that we have to break. I again, there are products that are out there, but the first thing to do is to make sure that you're seeking out those supports that have not always been best for our communities, but there are programs in place now, or should be, where they are looking at the disparities here and making sure that there's opportunities for funding.
Absolutely. And you know, as Pamela said, whether you talk to her groups, other SBDCs, or even call us, we're always willing to do some research for you as well. So don't feel as if you can't reach out or find assistance. A couple of other questions. I'm going to do these really quick so we can move through.
I just want to just say one thing. You brought something up, but around the social impact, I think that's what you were getting to. There's definitely more interest in this area where philanthropic groups are looking to work with other financial funding groups, government groups, to make opportunities available. And so that's why we're saying that you have to be ready and not necessarily ready, but willing to seek these things out. And again, knowing that you are worthy and that there is opportunity out there for you, and that we're working harder to make sure that those opportunities are available.
Thank you for that. Really quick question. I know that, you know, some businesses have struggled, and so if you've been paying yourself, you're receiving some unemployment benefits. Are companies like that still eligible for PPP? My sense is that you're trying to get your business back and you're sort of in a distressed situation. So Shea and Jamon, what are you hearing about, if I'm receiving unemployment benefits, can I still apply for PPP?
I'll say from the bank perspective, Jamon, I'm pretty sure you can kind of fill in behind me and fill in any holes I may left from a policy perspective. But from my reading of of PPP, and I'm looking at this right now, I don't see any mention about if there has been if you have filed for unemployment or any of the other services. I think the key thing that I always harken back to, that I tell business owners, is we know how the system is structured, and really and truly it did not change overnight, right? There are things that are working through the system to be done. And so a lot of times in the bank world, we'll tell someone, well, just get with your CPA, they'll be able to help you with this, that, and the third. But we also have to understand that not every business owner has access to a CPA. Right. And so that leads for that kind of a question like this, which I think is a very valid question. So if I was in the person who asks in shoes, what I would first do is I would lean on the CDFIs and on so much of the mission-based type institutions for my PPP, because I know I'm gonna get my hand held. We also have to understand, business owners also have to understand that not every business owner is at the same level when it comes to a cabinet. So if you are a business owner that has a CPA and attorney that you're paying, I would tell you, make them earn their supper, right? Those are going to be the ones that are going to be able to help you out. You can fall back on those. But when I reclaim a lot of rejected PPP applications, it is always around those smaller owners, for whether that is systemically or just for whatever reason, don't have those resources. So what I would say is, yes, I would with Chase. I always would encourage people to apply with Chase. But if you find yourself that you have other lacking resources in your cabinet, I would go to a place that gives those resources, because they'll have people like us on hand, or people with policy that can really navigate through there and not really talk you through a transactional way. But to answer that question directly, I don't know if there's any abundance of caution that needs to be taken around if you have applied for any type of assistance on the personal side. But I'll leave myself open to be corrected.
Right, and I would just say, as it relates to the work that we do here, to your point, I think you're right. But I think that if you are running a business, then you need to make sure that you're applying for this in a way that is really going to benefit your business. So I'd love for you to kind of think about that, Darlene, but also reach out to some TA providers as well. Next question is from Moses Wright. Does a PPP loan inhibit personal financial position? For instance, if you wanted to refinance a home?
So this is the grass and the weeds of what we think about from a policy perspective, because going back to the very last question that was asked, the federal government has a mandate to ensure that there aren't double dipping in federal programs, to ensure that you get your relief that you need. But you also don't live high off the hog either in that process. And so I guess to go specifically to that, if you do not have a CPA, to answer your question, what you really need to do is you really want to make sure that you talk with your lender who is helping you fill out your Paycheck Protection Program application. You either need to as well, speak with a community lender who may have some awareness of this as well. But principally, you need to ensure that whatever you're spending your Paycheck Protection Program funds on, it falls within the guidelines of the 60-40 threshold rule. Those are the three principal elements that you need to remember when spending your funds. And I guess before you move on to the next question, that is a great segue into the third section, tax provisions. You can move on to the next one, Alicia. The tax provisions are going to be a big part of the Paycheck Protection Program, because we know that we are approaching tax season now. In fact, we are in the middle of tax season. And so this new package it eases the tax treatment of forgiven PPP loans, making compliance measures more generous. And of these new provisions, one allows expenses paid for the proceeds of PPP loans to become tax deductible. And it also, what we will call the work opportunity tax credit, extends it 5 years from the previous threshold. And so there are many layers to go through before you go and fill out your taxes this year, before you go and even fill out your loan forgiveness if you have not already done so for your first PPP loan, or if you need to do so for your second PPP loan, because forgiveness measures have changed. And so the new law also extends and expands the CARES Act employee retention tax credit. And so it will keep in place until June 30th of this year. So that will impact small business owners with employees. That's an important part. And you can learn more about employee retention tax credits at the Treasury website. I believe it's treasury.gov, and they have a specific subsection dedicated to, if you are a small business owner or if you're an employer, what you need to know about filing taxes and what ERTC means for your business.
Thanks for that, Jamon. Couple of things. I'm going to answer two questions really quickly, and then to your point, I'd love for you to answer this third question. One question from Susan Vanderbilt. Hi, Susan. If you all can address this at the end, I'd be grateful for that. And it's basically just talking about any typical issues or lessons or best practices with PP applications that can be shared. So if you can hold on to that and come around to that. Felicia Palmer, you're asking a question about Black-owned business designation. You're going to see that come up at the end of this presentation, but do want to let you know that black.us, you need to go on that right now. That will give you a Black-owned designation. And we're also working with Google and their Black-owned badges. And so as it relates to search engine optimization, you're able to go into Google My Business and sort of be able to add that attribute badge to you as well. And that is going to be very beneficial in helping customers as well as others be able to locate you. Back to the issue that you were talking about before, Iman, Mary Morgan wants to know, how strict really is the SBA on this 24-week period of expenses? She was waiting until the end of the year to pay herself. Her 24-week period may have ended towards the end of November. So she paid herself in December and her period ended in November. Is she able to deduct that salary that she paid herself as part of the program?
Well, that's a great question. And again, this question is in addition to my answer will be in addition to the very last question that was asked, in which I've provided the answer that it is really a grass and weeds answer, and that this gets down into the technical details. And you need to make sure that you comply with federal government's guidance as best as you can. Because again, you want to make sure that you are able to have your loan fully forgiven if possible. And we know that there has been some major mishaps on the federal government's part in getting these loans out. And you may have even experienced some in receiving your first PPP loan, but please ensure that you are timely with complying with your covered period. And also ensure that you are as accurate as possible in being able to calculate your 60-40 operational expenses rule, because there is going to be a moment when you apply for forgiveness through your lender that the SBA may push it back or may not fully forgive your loan because of the aforementioned mistakes. So you just want to mitigate those, or mitigate the chances for you to have mistakes just by complying. In short, about your answer, it's best to talk with your lender to make sure that you have a reporting history of how you paid yourself, and that your covered period kind of overlapped with the month of December as well. And in that, notify that in your forgiveness application as best as possible. Try to reflect the reality of what happened, apply, and then if the SBA would need more guidance, it's always better for you to provide more guidance, but you definitely don't want to leave that out. I can't, as a policy practitioner, give you full guidance and accurate guidance on that specific problem, but however, I can ensure that you are aware that the SBA is looking at these forgiveness applications as such, and they will be able to determine your forgiveness loan amount as such as well.
Great. And I'm going to let you all continue. I just do want to note to everyone, if you look in the chat, you will see a series of URLs that direct you to some specific areas within our site, usblackchambers.org/CARES-Act/. So a lot of questions that you may have around finding an African-American CDFI, you can find that on the page. There are other resources that we have there as well that you can find on the page. And so we'll hear that again at the end of this presentation, but just wanted to make you aware of that.
Yeah, and that's great for mentioning that, because we know that this isn't a one-time thing, that information at the federal government is always changing, and that it's always best to stay in the know by staying connected to USBC. Very quickly, with SBA loan programs, there were more updates in addition to the PPP loan and the EIDL loan that were made in the latest stimulus package. And a few of those happen to be around the SBA 7A loan program, the 504 loan program, microloan program at SBA, among others. And much of this revolves around extending certain loan programs and the payments. So the federal government actually takes over payments for your existing loan before the pandemic. And that really helped out a lot of small business owners who actually were had existing loans through the SBA and through other federal partners. And it also expands resources for loan products, namely by providing additional funding for SBA loan products, as the ones I just mentioned. So there are also, if you have not gotten a chance to do research on the SBA website, other programs such as the microloan program. As I've mentioned, microloans are a critical part for small business owners or sole proprietorships who don't necessarily need $1 million or $500,000 in this moment. They need about $50,000 or less. That's what we will consider in the financial industry a microloan. And there are definitely federal government resources in place to help you get that degree of funding.
And the good thing about what the SBA did, they made a lot of those payments automatic last year. So again, this whole process is a big administrative process. And I say it because I know for me as a former banker, and probably for a lot of our entrepreneurs out there, they didn't get in the business to do paperwork all day, right? And so it is almost the antithesis of what you're built to do. So I say this, I speak to you, but I kind of speak to myself as well. And the things that we do on a day-to-day is really just taking that time and carve that time out and get your tribe together. You know if you have a good relationship with the banker, right? You know if you have a good relation. If you feel funny about your CPA, you already know that I would honor that intuition. And I would definitely say, now that I'm in this community role with Chase, and I'll put my email in the chat. Feel free to reach out to me, any additional assistance. More than happy to can continue to help. But I tell business owners that if you're between that kind of startup, less than $1 million phase, really don't have that relationship with the bank. If it's a Chase banker or somewhere in the Southeast, whatever, reach out to me. I've been through many LOBs with Chase, so we can see what we can do for you. But let's just say you're not in a place where there's a Chase, there's a couple of banks, but you're not feeling the love. I think those community CDFIs are going to be the place for that gap point. And they're filling that gap point a little bit more while the banks adjust their policies and things of that nature. I can speak for Chase that we have reclamation teams already built out right now that are focusing on Black and Latinx business owners or business owners below a certain amount of PPP requests that we can go in there and really continue to help them out. But the key thing is resources. And I'll say this, notice out of all the people we listed to talk to, we didn't list mama, cousin, other entrepreneurs and them. I've linked in every major part of the bank. And one of my biggest things that I see that holds people back, and I see that's more in the Black community because we're already on a red line, is when we come with assumptions from other businesses. Understand one business relationship may not be like your relationship. And so it's just highly important. Yeah, I get it. Everyone's talking. I would take that information in, but please don't go down a road based off of someone that had their experience and they're not in industry and not, aligned with us. But I will put my email in the chat. I just want to let everyone know it's open to reach out to me. Any assistance I can help with, I'm more than happy to do so.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. We, on that inclusive lending discussion, just wanting to end off on my end, discussing many of the resources that I mentioned at the first part of the presentation. There's been a $12 billion investment for minority-owned businesses, $9 billion through neighborhood capital investment programs, and also about $3 billion through the Community Development Financial Institution Fund at the Department of Treasury to really help out with small business lending. And this is why it's so important to stay involved with USBC and other partners, is because money is making its way to the communities, especially now with a more diverse administration, but you have to remain ready to be able to take advantage of these resources because, the window for the Paycheck Protection Program is even closing. And so the window for these resources are normally small in size, and you want to make sure that your small business is at that point. And so closing out on my end, in addition to these billion-dollar investments, please understand that there is a new package being negotiated on Capitol Hill and at the White House. You all may have seen it come across your screen, the American Rescue Plan, and it includes some provisions like a $1,400 stimulus payment. It also includes an extension to unemployment insurance claims, of which a small business owner during the webinar had a question about. And it also includes some billions of dollars, about $125 billion in investments for small business communities, again, with another focus on minority and underserved small businesses as well. And with that, it's important to understand that this administration is big on creating community navigators to ensure that many of the problems that you all have just mentioned about, if I applied for a PPP loan at one lender and I did it at another lender, will I then be rejected? The community navigator that's forthcoming will be able to support you as you, one, apply for the PPP loan, and two, receive it. And it'll also allow the federal government to understand, okay, there's about $35 billion in capped federal resources and capital in the city of Detroit. And we understand that, only a small percentage or a small slice of small business owners in Detroit from the minority community have been taking advantage of it. What's the holdup? So this is a really accountability tool that the Small Business Administration under President Biden is taking lead on and charge on in the next COVID relief package. And while Congress hopes to get it passed by mid-March, that's a hefty timeline to try to get what we will call a reconciliation bill passed in both houses, in both chambers, and into the president's desk. But we will be sure to keep you all updated. U.S. Black Chambers, a main principle of ours is making sure that we provide advocacy, and of that advocacy is making sure that you as a small business owner understands where the resources coming from at the federal government level.
And Jamon, I just want to thank you for for this partnership and for continuing to do all that we can do to make sure that our businesses do not fall through the crack. I have great news. As I was sitting here, I was getting an email from a small business, a locally owned restaurant that was having difficulty getting their PPP loan. And she just sent an email to myself and her network, the network that we've formed, so that there's no failure is not an option. And she was able to say that she was able to break through some of the issues that she was having with our small business association. There was a glitch in the bank, and was able to get her application successfully through. But, we are here. We'll continue to work together to keep our ear to the ground and making sure that we go up and down from the White House to right there to the pavement, making sure that our businesses survive and thrive beyond this pandemic. So I just want to tell people to keep pressing on, and help is on the way.
Absolutely. And with that, if Shea doesn't have much more to add, we can kick it over to Elisa to discuss, what small business owners can look forward to in USBC and other partnerships.
Yeah, nothing to add. Thanks for having me on. The only thing I just kind of said the whole time is really focusing on getting that tribe together, because we definitely get through. We get through these things better as a tribe, and whether it's inside or outside the bank. And I sent my contact information up there. Please don't hesitate to reach out. That's what we're here for.
All right, so I will very quickly breeze through what's upcoming next, brought to you by our Community Economic Development Corporation, which is essentially our nonprofit side to USDC. Alyssa spoke about it earlier, and there was a question asked about attributes and how do someone know that your business is indeed a Black owned. We've partnered with Google and their Black owned attribute. It is a small orange looking like a heart that you can add to your Google My Business page. You can get more information on that at www.grow.google/back owned. We're also a service provider for Grow with Google's free training. We do have February and March laid out. Here's what's coming up next in February. You can learn more about our free trainings at usblackchambers.org/grow with Google. And after you register for that Black owned attribute, hop on over to buyblack.us. That is the same link that's in the chat to onboard your business at no cost. We also are launching our certification platform that will be the only certification for Black owned businesses. Shea already spoke about it before, but we've partnered with Chase and they are helping our small businesses apply for PPP. You can learn more information at www.chase.ppp. And another partnership we do have with Shea is our Advancing Black Entrepreneurs program. This is essentially backed by popular demand. We do have our module 2, which is live featuring Shea, coming up on the 23rd at 2 p.m. You can register by visiting that link or www.usblackchambers/webinars. We also have everything that we've done on demand. So if you're at your leisure and you want to rewatch, please hop on over to that link. And this one will also be posted shortly after we end today. And last but not least, we do have an upcoming Black History Month event coming up on February 24th. It is free of cost. And we're essentially profiling Black Wall Street through the COVID pandemic. We have a lot of special guest speakers, some musical performances. So it's something you definitely don't want to miss. And you can find out more information on www.usblackchambers.org/Black History Month. So again, we thank you for joining us. If you have any other questions, please feel free to email us at programs@usblackchambers.org. All of our content is posted at www.usblackchambers.org/CARES Act. If you're looking for that list of CDFIs, a copy of this presentation, and some other tools and resources are also available for you. So again, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you the best and continue to thrive throughout the year. Bye-bye.
Take care.